Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Here in this audio, I'm going to bring forward a number of points that was brought up recently by Shaykh Muhammad Umal in recent gatherings of his, where he's addressing Salafis, or in particular Salafis that warn from jama'at, other various of groups that exist today. And these Salafis, he described them, are those who label others with titles as innovators. So before I wanted to discuss these points that he brought up, to see if they're valid or not, I wanted to give an introductory speech that the reason why I'm speaking about this topic in the English world, it is because a lot of the Somali masajids here in the West are connected to this matter. بين مستقل ومستكثر, and it varies from one masjid to another to what extent they're connected. But as we know, there are a lot of masajid, even locally, that are branches of a group, Somali group called Itisaam, aka Ittihad, formerly known as Ittihad. And not to go in length about this group, Itisaam, because we already discussed the historical side of Itisaam and Ittihad on our website around Da'wah. I'll share links at the bottom of how this group has originated. We share therein the initial discussion of Ittihad, the debate with its founder, Hassan Zahir Uwais, with Hassan Habib, Shaykh Hassan Habib. In an audio, we shared it on the website of that article that we were sharing at the bottom, where he mentions to Shaykh Hassan Zahir Uwais that you are originated as a group, Ittihad, from the Ikhwani Muslimin, the Muslim Brotherhood. And this is with no shadow of doubt, and he himself even acknowledged that, the founder at that time in the audio. And it's not something that can be denied. So Ittihad was a number of groups that broke off. And we're going to clarify that how Ikhwan Muslimin from 1928, from the time they were founded, they have subcategories. And they have broken off amongst themselves and divided. To each land that they're found in, they have divided into segments or sections where they have become further sects within the group of Muslim Brotherhood. And we'll give evidence to that with examples, inshallah, even with words of Shaykh Muhammad Umal, of his own words that we're going to put forward. So this group, Ittihad, the union, which is a Somali union that put all these different groups, Islah and some of these other groups, that have some of them, as most of the readings and what they were sourcing, was Sayyid Qutb that they had. And those elders that were with them, they can testify to this. And the details as well that you can find this, there's documentaries. If you go on YouTube, with the actual video and sound and images, documentaries on the history of Ittihad and I'tisaam. So they formed a union, and they basically came under one umbrella, despite them having differences in certain topics. as well Itisaam, which was a new improved. And what broke off from this group that came from it is Shabab, that group that we know, that extremist group. And Shabab, as we pointed out, they seen that Itisaam, after taking that step, like the fatwas of Umal and different others, that they were at a time where they were making takfir and they were rebelling and they were causing bloodshed that occurred at that time upon even people that are described as Muslims. And they also, on their manifesto, Itisaam, they had of their missions and objective, i'adatu al-khilafa. They wanted to bring the reign of the Islamic Caliphate back. So wars happened a lot at the hands of these individuals. And a lot of bloodshed occurred. And a lot of takfir, where people were being declared as disbelievers. And those who want to go back further, there's an audio as well on YouTube, more than one channel. You can type it as Muhammad Umal, Shalay, Wamata. Muhammad Umal, Shaykh Muhammad Umal, how he was yesterday and how he is today. And meaning that he was that person that was really the spiritual drive for Shabab. And these channels were, even by people, Shabab is using against Umal, that you were once supporting our ideologies, now you're against it. And they give proofs of audios of him giving verdicts and statements of these acts and praising them as the Mujahideen, the noble Mujahideen. So, not to go too much into that, we want to just address the points that Shaykh Muhammad Umal brought recently. But Itisaam, they came in an umbrella and they had all these different factions amongst them. That's why we find some of the masajid of Itisaam, even locally, or those who are in different parts of North America, even in Europe. And within their board are probably various people with different schools of thought, like you find from them amongst them probably a Sufi, and their board member a Tablighi. You find them, this person is more into Hassan Banna, the other one's more into Sayyid Qutb. This one is more into takfir, or he has ideologies that it's okay to blow oneself up, like as Umal, he gave a fatwa saying that the ulama divided on this. You can hear the audio on YouTube. That the ulama divided about blowing oneself up. And he tries to attribute it to Albani and Uthaymeen. But if you really look at the fatwas of Uthaymeen and Albani, like Albani, his real fatwa, he says, as of today, there's no thing of that. There's no correct legislated act of that. Also, a speech of Itisaam also may clarify. We clarify that in different places. But these are some people that perhaps have taken some of the old verdicts and statements and passed it on. So, in a nutshell, we wanted to address this because being that we live in a society where some of the branches of Itisaam, of masajid, have been established upon that, like some of the board members of some of the masajids would say it loud and clear, this is a masjid of Itisaam, or founded by Itisaam, or funded. And that's why when the president of Itisaam comes, and we've clarified his name and his details and what he believes, when he comes into the North America, he goes to the masajids of Itisaam, formerly known as Ittihad, and he's welcomed by them. طيب, so we're going to go straight into the first point that Shaykh Muhammad Umal has brought forward when he says the Salafi group, as a group or party, they were first came about in the Gulf War, approximately 1991, when Saddam Hussein was invading Kuwait that time, and then Saudi Arabia resorted to using the assistance of U.S. soldiers to come and to prevent it. And this is where he's saying this group, the Salafi group, first started. And this is not from Shaykh Muhammad Umal's first claim. This is not, he was not the first to claim this and allege this. Before him, who said this was Hassan Hussein, Shaykh Hassan Hussein, the person who says is that controversial figure in Kenya, Somali da'i, who says that if you pray behind Sudais in the Haram, your prayer is not valid, because he's a kafir. And the person makes takfir, the one who says that you can do all sorts of stuff on what the ideologies of the Khawarij and the Takfiris. So his statement is the following. I'm going to play it, inshallah.
ما يمكن باكو ولي الأمر وإلا أضيع واجب والمسلمين أضيعان وحكى صدق سوي سندونكم إلا أن تركوا ضعيفة كلية كمان قابا ما أرك.
So here he's talking about, in the context, that some are saying that we have to obey the ruler even if he's a disbeliever. And he's mocking, he's saying this group, and he's referring to the Salafis. Just to give context, Shaykh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymeen is the one who said, like, when he was asked, الحاكم الكافر هل يسمع له ويطاع أم يقاتل؟ He said نعم يسمع ويطاعون، يسمعون ويطاعون، لكن ليس معنى ذلك أن نتركهم. Like he says, when he was asked, is he heard obeyed, heard and obeyed? He said, yes, he's heard and obeyed, but that's not mean that we leave him. And it's like, and this is talking about in places of that permit this type of affair, where it's like he says, it doesn't mean that we cause a scenario where turaq fihi dima, where blood is shed and a lot of harm and troubles occurred. Like this is what he's mentioning. Also, Shaykh bin Baz is the one who says, let's listen to his speech. So here Shaykh bin Baz is talking about, and even if it's a government, it's a disbelieving government, you obey them in good acts, like the general acts that doesn't contradict the Sharia. So meaning that if this rule is established and he's there and it can't be removed by yourself through that process, of that regular process, then you obey in that which is of goodness. So like, for example, the traffic rules, these type of things that have benefit to people at large. And also here some speech of Shaykh al-Muslim Abbad, where he says إذا تسلط الكافر ولم يمكن التخلص منه إلا بضرر أكبر فإنه يسمع له ويطاع بما هو معروف. يعني في الأمور التي تتعلق بالتنظيم مثل تنظيمات المرور. He says here he's obeyed and be removed because he's not supposed to be in his position, and that's the consensus. So also, if you can listen to the recent audios of Umal, he uses against the Salafis. He says that from their corrupted principles is that they say we obey the kafir ruler. This is not correct. The origin is that is to be removed, and especially in the Muslim lands, if a kafir thinks, then he's with that process, as long as it doesn't lead to as I mentioned here, bloodshed or greater harm. But if not the case, then he's to be obeyed and adhered to, and goodness, like the policies of general policies of goodness. So this is it in the context of what we're referring to. So we're playing the audio of Hassan Hussein. So we know the context, inshallah.
ضعيفات اللي يتمان قابن ويقون معاراتك هي سياسة المسلمين تان وحبك لا سعوني وطائفة مرين كإنجليز السميين أصل كودي إن.
He's saying that I never seen a group that this to reach to steep down to this of lowliness. Then, like he's referring to the Salafis. I don't know anything about politics. This was known. There's no common doubts of like those people. The past, they used to say the Salafis don't know fiqh al-waqi'. They have no clue what's going on in the world and regarding politics. Saudi has made them, or he's saying that this group was produced by Saudi and made by them.
رئيس عود بسميه هؤلاء المخابرات كمريكان كي إنجليز كتشدين بقدمنا هؤلاء باللجوم دجالكي عراقي برجع دحية يا خليج كدمنا الدين بالغاد كتيبة.
So he's saying the family of Saud, the royal family of Saudi, and America and Europe, the secret agencies of like the FBI and these type of people. They're the one who have created the group of the Salafis. This is what he's saying. And they made it a deen. And it all started through the Gulf War. Similar statement. That the group of Salafis first came about in the Gulf War, and we heard in the audio of Muhammad Umal, the first of this group, it started in the Gulf War.
waxaan tilmaamay xisbigani inuu axsaabta kale kaga daran yahay.
Here Shaykh Muhammad Umal, he pointed out that this Salafi group, we're going to see further what he speaks about, like Salafis that we know of today, they're worse than the rest of the Jama'at, the different partisan groups today. They're worse than them. Billahi alaykum. And even the same speech that he uses, of some vague speech of Shaykh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymin, in the same speech that he reads, he says the Hizb al-Salafi, that partisan group that he's referring to as Salafis, if there is a group that is call themselves Salafis and they're narrow-minded and they have monopolized Salafiyah, which does exist, those type of people are wrong. Shaykh al-Uthaymin, he says, Hum aqrab, they're closer out of all these groups to Sawab. And he's saying something different to Uthaymin. So we're going to see this further, inshallah.
inuu axsaabta kale kaga daran yahay waxyaalaha ay axsaabta ku eedeeyaan oo taxasubka iyo tacasubka iyo tafriiq iyo tafarruq intaba inay kaga daran yihiin ururada kale ilaa dadka qaarkood ay ku magacaabeen xisbu mukaafaxati al-axzaab.
And he said that to extent people labeled the Salafi group as anti-partisans or a group that is against the rest of the groups. And this is a nickname he's saying that has been labeled, which says the Salafis are generally against the other groups. And we're going to give a speech of that.
إلا أن الإخوة السلفيين هم أقرب الفرق إلى الصواب لكن ولا لها السلفيين تلره أيجا فرق ذي كوحها حق الصواب كأيجا أقوله
You can hear it. So this is it, where he mentions that with the speech of Itisaam that they are closer, even the ones who monopolize Salafiyah, those who make it like a group, restricted, they are still better off and they are than all these other groups out there. And we'll clarify from how many angles, inshallah, let alone the real Salafis. Also, what adds to the speech of Umal that the Salafis, they're worse than the rest of the groups. His other speech here, which shows you, we're going to show how there's lacking insaf, and fairness in the speech, especially when we're going to compare, we're going to find other speech of Umal where he's speaking about the Ikhwan, how they divided amongst themselves so greatly, and how much harm they caused. And we're going to compare it, just for us to be just. We're all going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَا يَجْرِمَنَّكُمْ شَنَآنُ قَوْمٍ عَلَىٰ أَنْ لَا تَعْدِلُوا اعْدِلُوا هُوَ أَقْرَبُ لِلتَّقْوَى. Do not allow your enmity for people, allow you not to be just. وَإِذَا قُلْتُمْ فَاعْدِلُوا. And if you speak about a people, be just and fair. Even if it's people that who are your opponents, probably speak about you, you still have to be fair. Let's hear the speech.
وكان صوت المعني إن يجو كلا تجانو إسخلافين الشيخ يحرتيسي أدنى كي كلا سي كلا بحا أدنى سي كلا بحا أنت كلية كمينة قابسانين دعادي كلا عالم الإسلامي تشرتينا مدى حكومان يمدى تبديعيان يمدى تضليليان بكدية بل عد كان نبض كالشيء تبديع عودة وعالم الإسلامي علماء تشوكتا كمدى ويريح.
I said, and the people that are safe from their tabdi'ah, declaration of being declared as an innovator, and the whole world are few. Pay attention to that words. SubhanAllah. Even this group, suppose that there's even them, I don't think that's a fair statement about them. Bismillah.
وأنا أوتيك دونا وحنا كتلمام دونا إن شاء الله تعالى. علماء قاركود وحي تلماميان. فتنة كوين أهل السنة أنت هذا اللي حسوسيه عصور تنضمبه فتنة كوين فتنة الشيخ ربيع وكان مصامرين.
He says here, some scholars, he didn't mention who, say that, and he's using it as to support what he's mentioning, that in these times there hasn't occurred a bigger fitna from Shaykh Rabi'. And he's talking also about Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami, because he's referring to that these people, the Salafi, supposedly group, were invented by, they haven't created a fitna greater that has ever come than their fitna. And in these times. This is the statement he's saying about this.
وكوا بدنوا مغلي دونا كم بديهن مريه أي دعوة نصوص صارتي إن لقى إلاليو أفكار خلدان إنت لقوا الشبه إن إيجا اللي يسكدلو أو قارت اللي يسكليو أو إيجا اللي يسكسلدو أو كدبنا واجب كودي ومدة كجا آدنا دين تكجا آدنا الدلك كجا آدنا إنت يضيعان إن إيجا استوى دكتور مسألة سوى مسألة نتيجة هلستة فكرة إلى
So he's saying that the reason why he's speaking about the Salafi group is that the fruits of our youth before us, that are sitting before us, they're at risk. They're going to, if they get impacted, supposedly by this ideology of the Salafi, of the people he's referring to, they're going to start fighting one another, and what they're really supposed to be working for their people and their country, they're going to lose from that. We want to know, and did the Salafis do what some of these groups have done, in terms of even like spilling blood? Suppose these groups, some Salafis maybe of their individual mistakes, even with their mistakes, Are they to this extent that you can speak about them to these mountain parts, but the other groups that have caused so much harm and so forth, that we keep these masajid of Itisaam under the umbrella of unity and union, they just let them be upon what some of them are doing or even what happened in history, and they're quiet about it. And we're going to see the principle, what unites Itisaam and Ittihad is the principle Hassan al-Banna. He says, and a lot of some of these masajids, they say this principle, and even different words. It is the qa'idah of Hassan al-Banna, the Ikhwani Muslimin Brotherhood movement. They say, نجتمع فيما اتفقنا عليه ويعذر بعضنا بعضا فيما اختلفنا فيه. These people, when they find things in common, they come together and they just excuse each other and just sweep the differences. تحسبهم جميعا وقلوبهم شتى. You assume they're united, but they're not. And we're going to give examples, inshallah, of the amount of even Itisaam themselves, how they're broken, divided into certain people and certain things within them, inshallah. But this is what he's mentioning. He's saying there's such a threat, like as the Salafis are going to be like the Ikhwan Muslimin that caused bloodshed and division and even harm, and even like what Ittihad did. Like, did the Salafis ever cause this affair? Did they suppose that they made a mistake in a ruling on an individual, or they said something wrong, or kada? It's a statement. Let's give them the most. But bloodshed or okay, this is and even if they said something, for example, out of غيرة يعني jealousy, that was uncalled for example, it wasn't deserving but another. Sometimes that you could look at as a mistake, less than in comparison to what Ikhwan Muslimin they're doing. Look at when Umar ibn Khattab, when he said about Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a, دعني يا رسول الله أضرب عنق هذا المنافق. Called out of his jealousy so much, he called him a hypocrite, Hatib ibn Abi Balta'a. And the Prophet ﷺ said, leave him be, قد شهد بدر. He has attended the expedition of Badr. And he's from the elites, from the virtuous Sahabas. Prophet defended him and didn't attack Umar al-Khattab. And sometimes when a person, if a Salafi out of jealousy says something, you correct them, you teach them. And suppose if someone went far in his declaration of someone else who spoke, but to compare and say that this type of stuff is worse than what the people have done of these different groups of bloodshed and havoc in the Muslim lands. And we're going to show even how Al-Qaeda is from Ikhwan Muslimin. Daesh is from Ikhwan Muslimin. All these different groups we're going to clarify. And even the Sufi, all the turuq, the different spiritual groups amongst them. How they broke off from different groups. Naqshbandiya, Diobandiya, this group, all of these groups, and they're against each other. And even some of them into shirk. And you're going to say the Salafis are worse? There's a Yawm al-Qiyamah, brothers.
خوارجته أما التكفير كمان كوحدة الصدحات وأورك اللو يقانو القاعدة تنظيم القاعدة.
So he's listing the different groups, how they divided.
تنظيم كاسي وحيربان تاريخي سينسينية سيادو فهمتان.
He's talking about Al-Qaeda. We want to point out this one.
تنظيم كاسي أصل كيسي فكريا مركلينا مصر بو كسو جيدا waxaa halkaa ka yimid masar tandiim la dhihi jiray الجماعة الإسلامية oo madax u ahaa wadaadkii Sheikh Abdurrahman Sheikh Umar Abdurrahman ee Mareykanka ku xiran Ilaahay tabaaraka wa taala ka soo daayay qolaa ay markii hore wax wada wateen iyay kala infisaaleen
So he mentions that Al-Qaeda, Tanzim Al-Qaeda, they originated from Egypt. And there was a group called Islamiyah, and within this group they separated amongst themselves.
dowladda Masar bay la dagaalami jireen oo dadka booqashada ku yimid gaalada iyo ciidanka iyo booliiska iyo dadka weynaha wax ku noqda iyo qacday ku hayn jireen dowladda markii dambe way xamili waayeen laba ay u qaybsameen marka al-jamaa al-islaamiyya nimankii la baxay wixii muraajacaad bay sameeyeen wixii waxay arkeen inuusan anfacaynin culimo u soo baxday ama markii horeba jirtay fikirkii wax badan bay ka noqdeen dowladda Masar bay dib u heshiiyeen way jiraan.
He's saying that they were going against the Egyptian government and they divided, and there was one that went back and had peace or solved the issue with the Egyptian government.
hadda waxay ka mid yihiin jamaacadka hadda doorashooyinka galaya Masar mid ka mid ah magaca Salafiga ku imaanay.
Yeah, here he puts it out. One of these groups, these factions that broke off from the original of that, the founding start point of Al-Qaeda, is a group that was with them, now that became within the parliament and as politics of Egypt, and solved the issue with the Egyptian government, is the Hizb that's called Hizb al-Salafi. And we're going to point out later on that this group is what Shaykh Muhammad Salih al-Uthaymin is mostly talking about. A partisan group that's called Salafi. And they restricted themselves. And it was with Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini and these type of people. Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini, we're going to share some of his speech. It's also found on YouTube. That he said it was a durura, we had to form the hizb called Salafi. He said it was a durura. Go on YouTube, find yourself with his voice. So necessarily we had to. And his group, and it was a lot of people seen as harm. And even people gave them the title Salafi Jadidiyya. So this is the real Salafi Jadidiyya that deserves this title. But if you look at it, if you ask Muhammad Umal about Ishaq al-Huwaini and these people, you find praises. Why? Because later on, Ishaq al-Huwaini, when he aligned more with those individuals that Itisaam, like from the people that Itisaam look up on, even as it was found on their website, official website, Yusuf Qardawi. And you found Ishaq al-Huwaini join alliances with him. And those people, and Qatar that harbored the Ikhwan Muslimin, they went and you found a lot of the opinions about Ishaq al-Huwaini before, even about Hamas. He used to say all sorts of stuff, that they were invented by this group and it's an organization invented by the Yahud and this and this. This is what he said. And then later on he changed his statements about Hamas. It's all on YouTube. You can go back and check it yourself. But just going back, Abu Ishaq al-Huwaini and these type of people, even Shaykh al-Albani, you can find the audio on YouTube as well. He calls these people that are even associated with Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq, Bihya Turath, that the Salafiyya that they're coming with, Salafi Jadidiyya. It's a new Salafiyya, Neo-Salafiyya. But you find, when you ask, like you can find the same audio of Umal and his recent audios, he talks about Ihya Turath, he said it's a Jam'iyya Salafiyya. And how does Jam'iyya Salafiyya? They divided the Salafis with all their money. They were everywhere, even in Europe. They divided so many people. Here we had Al-Muntada, we had this group. That's why scholars spoke about how much people, and they were printing the books of Sayyid Qutb and milestones so much and pushing it and putting that forward. And those ideologies end up dividing the people. And that's why Shaykh Albani said this is a Salafiyya Jadidiyya. And even look at that group, Hizb al-Salafi, was supported by them and formed with them. And these are facts. Anyone can Google it and find it themselves. So now we're going back, continue with the speech. It's very important we hear this. This audio is going to be a bit long. We're going to try to probably see it divided in parts. But you all need to hear this history with us and see his points, and we're going to try to tackle all point by point. It's going to be a while, but it's needed. And alhamdulillah, this is for clarity, because a lot of people, they ask of the history why certain Somali masajids are labeled the Itisaam and this, because they have these ideologies of their scholars, Umal and so forth. They support them and they are on this. And when you go against them, advice, they call you Jadidiyya. Well, in reality, the people that Itisaam is initially from, because Itisaam, the person that even gave them the ideology, the idea to come together. Why you all groups of Ikhwan just come together? Was Hassan al-Turabi from Sudan. He came and he offered them the idea. Unify under a union, Ittihad. So that's how they are. So even their idea of coming together was by the Ikhwanis. And so this is initially how it is. And now we see even Al-Qaeda are from the Ikhwan Muslimin. We'll continue with the speech, inshallah. We use the speech because some of the followers, if you give them someone else, they won't probably accept it. So we have to give it from his person who have their own, وَشَهِدَ شَاهِدٌ مِنْ أَهْلِهِ, someone of their own who attested.
magaca salafiga ku imaanay طيب koox kale waxaa jirtay ka tagtay meesha markay dawladdii xamili weyday oo dhib badan gaadhay ka tagtay oo uu hogaaminayay ninka la yiraahdo Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri ayaa hogaaminayay.
Then he goes on to mention Ayman al-Zawahiri, how he came about from this group, and Rifa'i, and he's going to also mention Osama bin Laden, and the different groups, and they became four, and different one even from Bangladesh, Pakistan, the different Muslim Brotherhood. Then they all went to Afghanistan, and they end up differing amongst themselves.
kitaabka waa kitaabka uu radin doono Ayman al-Zawahiri oo uu ku radiyay kitaabkiisa uu ku magacaabay tabri'atu ummati al-qalami was-sayfi min tuhmati al-khawri wad-da'f. Ayman al-Zawahiri markii dambe qoray wuxuu ku radinayaa kitaabkaas.
So here he's mentioning even this group that Al-Qaeda is from. They started to write books as they broken off from each other, and they're further dividing. They started to write books refuting each other. So extreme group against extreme group, Ayman al-Zawahiri and these people, they're refuting each other.
السيد الإمام كتابه يسور كذب قرأ كردي أيمن.
And that person, he also wrote another book and respond.
وكما عابي التعرية لكتاب التبرئة. ليس كذب التكمرك. الشيخ يأردي جيسوا أساس.
He said, look, the Shaykh and his students have a collision. And before we noticed, like in Umal in his points, he was using against the Salafis to show that is that the fact that a student and a Shaykh, they divided. And he's trying to use this as a point to show that the Hizb Salafi can't be upon the truth. And this is what he's mentioning. If this is found worse in other groups. And even we know in the past and present, there's individuals are not, certain things can occur. There's a trial sometimes. Like we know, Mu'tazilites, they came from the halaqah of Hassan al-Basri, in terms of not Hassan al-Basri teaching them, but this man attended and he made his own isolated group from there, and he ended up further splitting. So are we going to blame Hassan al-Basri now? So he can't be on the truth because the people broke off from him. And maybe Hassan al-Basri changes what he used to say about them because this is not correct. This is not correct. We're going to see this, inshallah, when we get to that point.
الشيخ يأردي جيسوا أساس. نكن سيد الإمام كل هذا واحدين. فك الله أسره. إلهي أساسود أيه. واحدين هذا. لكن وحوها الشيخ ظواهري بوها. sida ninka la yidhaahdo Usaama ba sheekhiisu uu ahaa Musa al-Qarani mataqaanaa.
So he's mentioning different, and even how they started going against each other as teachers and students.
السؤال baa la weydiiyey waxa la yidhi ninkii la dhihi jiray Cabdullah Azam yaad waxa fikirkii al-Qaacida qaatay isla fikirkii al-Qaacida waxa qaato ku ta'asuray xarakaadka xubinka ka noqday al-Qaacida intooda badan silsilada aad u fahma xarakaadka waxa kamid ah kuwa xubin ka noqday iyo kuwa al-Qaacida iska taqliidiyay oo xubin ka ahayn oon xubinnimo la siinin laakiin afkaarteeda iyo dhaqamadeeda iyo tasarrufaadkeeda intay fiiriyaan iska taqliidinayo iska raacay kulligood fikirkii bay si duuduban u qaateen ayagoon waxba ka reebin waxa kamid ah ururada iyada xarakatu shabaab al-mujaahidiin.
Here he mentions that the group that broke off also from Al-Qaeda or took or got inspired by their ideologies was the Shabab. And we know Shabab is originally from Ittihad. And he also broke off from when they further with Itisaam, when they seen that Itisaam chose to take a political route afterwards, after wars. They didn't want that. And they broke off, and you can see how they are now attacking. They're saying this is how you guys used to speak, Umal and so forth, and they're playing their audios. And now you're saying something different. Like when they asked the president on YouTube, Itisaam, question, said, before you and your ulama gave a fatwa to do jihad against Dawlad Abdullah Yusuf. Dawlad Abdullah Yusuf, the government of Abdullah Yusuf, Somalia. President, and you guys make takfir on him. I said, ridda, it's apostasy. And then, because he brought the Ethiopian soldiers, and he brought them in. And then he said, what about Hassan Shaykh? He brought the Ethiopian soldiers too. Why? He's not a kafir. He couldn't answer properly. It's up until now, they couldn't answer. And we see a lot of inconsistency from them, Umal and so forth, how much changes in statements. Even like we can see Umal's speech, if you look at his recent speech, even in his parts, and what he said before about Hamas. Like what he said before about Hamas. And Hamas also is from the Muslim Brotherhood. All these groups that broke off, and even Palestine, how much in Gaza alone, how much groups of the Muslim Brotherhood, and they were fighting each other. And factions. Muslim Brotherhood, people know how much, even in Syria alone, Daesh is from Muslim Brotherhood. And everybody knows these things. All these different groups that even were fighting in Syria, they were fighting each other and all from Muslim Brotherhood. Even in Kuwait, there was a time period with the Sururi movement. They broke off from each other. Someone was Sayyid Qutb and someone was Hassan Banna. They were more like the Sufi type. And with all this, he's saying the division regarding the Salafis is worse. And like, are these people causing bloodshed, killing each other? How much people are being assassinated? We have to be fair, brothers. We'll play, inshallah, here the speech of Umal when he was speaking about Hamas before. And you can hear also in these parts of the series when he's talking about Salafis, he uses that against them as the corrupted principles of the Salafis is some statements that they said about Hamas. I will listen to the previous speech of Umal before. Here he's speaking about Hamas and Qassam.
ururada mujaahidiinta Afghanistan ka dagaalama Filistiin ka dagaalama imise sare dagaalamay ya Israa'iil la dagaalamay Daesh waxaanu dib ka imaanay bay dagaalamay ilaa haddana dagaalkii jihaadkii ugu taagay waxaad markii isaga yeediyeen dhowr urur oo khaldan oo wax ka khaldan yihiin aad u doonaysaa muslimiinta inaad intaad u luqun jibada tiraahdo iyagoo ba islaamkii u maqan war way kharibeen waxbay kharibeen.
He mentions, he speaks So well, these people, they've been fighting for so long, he's saying, against, and they claim it's jihad, and these people are missing out, and he's pointing things out, and he puts them alongside with his context of Daesh. And now if you read his speech, or even in his recent audios where he's attacking, it's different. And there's no, this is the thing about Muhammad Umal, he switches up his speech a lot of inconsistency, and there's no clear tawbah, repentance about the past, how much with his fatwa, a lot of bloodshed occurred, a lot of people were deceived. And some people, from that, they're still having, even with the wars, regrets about what happened. And it was based upon these fatwa. They said these ulama of Itisaam said these statements, and they just moved on with their da'wah as if nothing happened. And just wiped everything under the rug, some of them. So going back to the points that Shaykh Muhammad Umal, he brought forward. He brought at his first part, which is not really mahal niza, the place of real tension. No one is disagreeing that the Salafis are hizb in terms of the linguistic point of view. All the scholars, in terms of, they all agree that Salafis are a jama'ah, they are firqa, inshallah, firqa najiyah, like the wording. And the Salafis, as we know, is one jama'ah. The congregation, they call them a jama'ah. A ta'ifa al-mansura, that group. Also, Hizbullah, they're called the saved group of Allah, inshallah. So linguistically, no one is denying that they don't have to be knowing each other or meeting each other. They're all, even if someone years ago lived and this person, they all refer to one group. No one is denying that. So that's not mahal niza'. And we'll clarify even wordings of the scholars who emphasize that the Salafis, from that point of view, they're, inshallah, Hizbullah, with no shadow of doubt.
السلفية حزب من الأحزاب وهل يجوز
السلفية هي الأصل يا أخي، ما هي بحزب من الأحزاب، هي الأصل، هي الأصل، وما خالفها فهو باطل. نعم قد يسمون حزبا لأن الله قال أولئك حزب الله.
Shaykh Salih Fawzan, he says they're not like a group from amongst the groups, not like that type of hizb, but they're called hizb from the angle that ألا إن حزب الله هم المفلحون, the group of Allah is victorious.
معرفة السلف والسلفيين، لأن في هذه الأيام الصعبة بعض الناس يضعون السلفيين مع الأحزاب المحدثة ويعتبرونهم حزبا، حزب الإخوان المسلمين، حزب السلفيين، حزب التبليغيين، وحزب السروريين، وأنت ماشي. هذا خطأ، تقسيم خاطئ. السلف هم أصحاب الخط، السلفيون هم الباقون على ذلك الخط على.
Yeah, so here he points out that some people came out and made like the Salafis, like if they're amongst the contemporary parties of today, groups, like with the Ikhwan, the Tabligh. He said, no, that's not right. The Salafis are in the original line, the upright state. They're remaining upon that. They're not like a group amongst the groups like that. So, wanted to go now to the next point in Shaykh Muhammad Umal's next part. He was emphasizing that the Salafis are partisan group based upon the speech of Shaykh Muhammad bin Salih al-Uthaymeen, rahmatullahi alayh. And this is a common thing that some of these people do, unfortunately, is when they find a speech of a scholar, and this is like even they say ways of Ahl Bid'ah. Shawkani in Adab al-Talab, he says وَقَدْ جَرَتْ قَاعِدَةُ أهل البدعة في سابق الدهر ولاحقه بأنهم يفرحون بصدور الكلمة الواحدة عن عالم من العلماء ويبالغون في إشهارها وإذاعتها فيما بينهم. And the principle of Ahl Bid'ah is that when they find a speech of a scholar that's supports them or they can use, they spread it, make it go viral, brother. This is the speech of Uthaymin, they have used it and abused it. And there's other speech of Uthaymin that clarifies it, but they don't want to share that. وَيَجْعَلُونَهَا حُجَّةً لِبِدْعَتِهِمْ, and they make it a hujjah for their innovation. وَيَضْرِبُونَ بِهَا وَجْهَ مَنْ أَنْكَرَ عَلَيْهِمْ, and whoever critiques them, they use this. For example, this speech here, we'll share a number of different speeches of Uthaymin. Because at the early stages, Uthaymin uttered those words. As he's seen that there was some monopolizing Salafi, and we're going to give examples of people that actually formed a hizb out of Salafi. And we've seen here in these lands and these places, people are under a particular Shaykh, and it's not like upon the understanding of the Salaf al-Salih, it's based upon understanding of their particular way, if you're in it with them or not, and they just use the name Salafi. So yes, those type of speech applies to them, but we're going to show that it's not negating that what Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami and Shaykh Rabi' they were the real Salafis, and he pointed out, we're going to give examples of Shaykh Muhammad Salih Uthaymin speech. He's not referring to these people, and he defends them, inshallah.
وأما تلقيبه السلفيين بالتلفيين فأنا أوافقه على ذلك أيضا. أقول إن السلفيين تلفيون ولكنهم يتلفون البدع ويقضون عليها.
MashaAllah, here he defends the Salafis. Shaykh Rabi', Shaykh Muhammad Jami, the people are giving them nicknames. They call them Talafiyun. These are not Talafi, they're not Salafi, they're Talafi. So he defended him, saying, inshallah, yes, they're Talafi from the meaning of they destroy bid'ah. And he calls them Salafis. And so we know there's real Salafis. That's what the same means defending. MashaAllah. He goes, these Salafis, they're reviving the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And wow, how excellent Salafis are these. He says, how excellent as them as companions and people. Yeah, mashallah. He goes, well, I'm talking about the Salafis. I'm not talking about those who monopolized Salafi and made it like a party of their own. So you can see, like Uthaymin, he clarifies his speech. When he's defending Muhammad Aman Jami and Shaykh Rabi', he calls them like the real Salafis. And when he's talking about, he said, there are some people out there that are partisans. They're like the rest of the groups in terms of that, even though they're better, Uthaymin mentions, but just showing you, there's a clarification of his speech.
ولكني أعني بالسلف من يتبع ما جاء عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بدون تحزب، وأنا أنكر جميع التحزبات أيا كان لونها أو أيا كان اسمها، وأقول إن الأمة الإسلامية حزب واحد، ومن يتولى الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا فإن حزب الله هم الغالبون. فحزب الله هم المتمسكون بشريعة الله تعالى ظاهرا وباطنا المنابذون للبدع صغيرها وكبيرها الذين لا يقدمون.
So this is all his speech, and he's showing you that in the context further, and also to highlight further, inshallah, that you can hear, like, so people can understand that he's not talking about Shaykh Rabi', as Umal is trying to mislead the people to think. Here's some words of Uthaymin, and in those times when Shaykh Rabi' was speaking about some of these people, and he was labeling them and refuting them, You can hear the words of Shaykh Muhammad Salih Uthaymin.
السؤال الثاني: ما هي نصيحتكم لمن يمنع أشرطة الشيخ ربيع بن هادي بدعوى أنها تثير الفتنة وفيها مدح لولاة الأمور في المملكة وأن مدحه أي مدح الشيخ ربيع للحكام نفاق؟
رأينا أن هذا غلط وخطأ عظيم، والشيخ ربيع من علماء السنة ومن أهل الخير وعقيدته سليمة ومنهجه قويم.
He defends him from all angles. What happened to what Umal saying? Using the speech of Uthaymin to apply it to Shaykh Rabi'a and Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami. We said his aqeedah was correct, his manhaj was correct, he's from the ulama sunnah upon khair, and those are warning from his tapes that have like refutation, Shaykh Rabi'a, he said it's not correct, those will go wrong.
لكن لما كان يتكلم على بعض الرموز عند بعض الناس من المتأخرين وصموه بهذه العود.
The Balakhi clarifies. He says, however, when Shaykh Rabi' was speaking about some of the icon, the leading figures of some of the mutaakhirin, the latter people, he's referring to Salman, Aoud, and Safar Hawali, because later on, Uthaymin, you can hear the tapes of his previous statements about those people, but when he's seen what Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami and Shaykh Rabi' was saying was to be true, he took back and he agreed with them. And he's saying when Shaykh Rabi' spoke about these people end up labeling him as trying to label Shaykh Rabi' with these type of false claims and these defects. And so this is also another reference to show that the speech of Uthaymin is not talking about Shaykh Muhammad Jami and Shaykh Rabi' and upon that. Like for example here he's asked about هل هناك نصوص في الكتاب والسنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فيهما إباحة تعدد الجماعات أو الإخوان. Look at this question. Uthaymin's asked, is there anything in the text to have multiple jama'at or the ikhwan, the brotherhood? ليس في الكتاب ولا في السنة ما يبيح تعدد الأحزاب والجماعات بل إن في الكتاب والسنة ما يذم ذلك. And this goes against Itisaam. Itisaam on their manifesto and so forth, they try to prove that on the website that ta'addud al-jama'at is okay. And we clarified on Twandawa when we spoke about Itisaam. They even try to use a general vague fatwa of Shaykh bin Baz, and they left off other speech of Shaykh bin Baz where it's clarified. So like we said here, Jama'at Itisaam have shared on their official website on May 1st, 2013, a couple of general fatwa Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah on the ruling of having multiple Jama'at groups in Islam. Yet for some reason, Jama'at Itisaam left off sharing the clearest verdict out of all of them. وإن Shaykh bin Baz rahimahullah said ولا ريب أن تعدد الجماعات فيه خطر كثير والواجب عليهم أن يكونوا شيئا واحدا. And with no doubt that having multiple groups is a matter of much danger and is obligatory upon them to become one, to unite. Also Shaykh Salih Fawzan, when he's refuting Dr. Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq, key role model for the group Jama'at al-Itisaam, for misleading the masses to believe that having multiple groups in Islam is something encouraged by the scholars. Like if you read, and we shared it on Twandawa, if you go to the article of Itisaam, the history of them, he mentions, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, that this affair of having multiple jama'at is wrong, and then he says وقد قام أخونا فضيلة الشيخ ربيع بن هادي المدخلي بالرد عليه في هذا الكتاب. Look at this, supporting Fawzan. So no one ever came and said that these people they were wrong or so forth. الذي هو بين يدي القارئ بعنوان جماعة واحدة لا جماعات وصراط واحد لا عشرات. وقد قرأت فوجدت وافيا بالمقصود الحمد لله. He mentions that he got refuted, Shaykh Rabi refuted this person, Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq. or Itisaam, and these people, they connected even when he died. On the WhatsApp group, some of these people, they were praising him with like high labels. And this is a person that caused a lot of these problems. Like Itisaam is one of the biggest issues with them and the Salafis. Salafis are against having multiple groups. Itisaam says no problem. Like one of the people of Itisaam, Dr. Khadr Hassan, he said, what's wrong with it? It's like having multiple jama'ah for salat. That's what he compared it to. So Shaykh Rabi has a book called Jama'a Wahida La Jama'at. So he praises this book. He said this book is a good book, having one jama'ah and not multiple jama'ats. One path and not multiple paths. So going back to the speech of Itisaam, he also praises the book of Shaykh Rabi. He says, كلما كان الإنسان منطويا تحت كتاب الله وسنة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم متبعا لآثار النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وخلفائه الراشدين من كتاب جماعة واحدة لا جماعات للشيخ ربيع المدخلي حفظه الله العثيمين. Referring to it, that Shaykh Rabi's book جماعة واحدة. So we're not trying to say Shaykh Rabi is infallible, but we're just trying to say what you said at that particular time that these scholars were referring to them is not correct. We just have to be fair. It's possible later on Shaykh Rabi did an error in here, or something. He's a human being himself. He says, I make mistakes, I'm right at times, I forget, I remember. Don't blindfold on me. But this particular thing, his refutation, he was correct. So to come and apply the speech of Itisaam onto them is not correct. But rather you should apply it to individuals who will give examples that they made Salafiyya restricted. And I'll give you an example here.
هل يجوز أن يكون في الإخوة السلفيين حزبا وهل يجوز الدخول في جمعية الحكمة؟
So they're asking Shaykh Mubil, is it allowed to have for the Salafis Hizbun? And they're asking Shaykh Mubil. There's people that actually did this, that formed their own group. And Shaykh Mubil goes on to say it's not allowed. But yet, Muhammad Umal is saying that Shaykh Mubil is part of this Hizb and of this monopolized group. We'll show more words, inshallah, that Muhammad Salih Uthaymin's speech is talking about groups, like even like in Egypt, Ahmed Naqib, he made taraja, he said of قول إنشاء الحزب السلفي. And it's on YouTube, you can find it. قصة رجوع أحمد نقيب من أن قول بإنشاء حزب السلفي. And also in Yemen, there's a group called Hizb al-Rashad al-Salafi. Also, we know, like in Ahl al-Hadith, some Ahl al-Hadith, they have like Amir, and they have like some bay'ah, pledging allegiance, and they call themselves as well Salafiyun now. And here's some words of Shaykh Albani.
فكأنهم يشعرون في قرارة نفوسهم أنهم فيما هم عليه ليسوا سلفيين.
لو هم يقولون شيخنا سلفيين لكن ربما أن نتجاوزهم.
معليش هم يقولون هكذا.
نعم.
نحن شو معنى سلفيين؟ في أي شيء يتبناه الإنسان معنى أنه يتبنى ما كان عليه السلف الصالح. الآن هذا التحزب وهذا التكتل، هل هكذا كان السلف الصالح؟ سيقولون
طبعا.
So here, Shaykh Albani, is talking about some people call themselves Salafis, but they have takattul. They're very biased. They're restricted. They have this narrow allegiance and narrow type of disownment. It's like a gang, and if you look at them. And we've seen a lot of examples of some of these people. They monopolize that with Salafiyya for their own advantages. Shaykh Albani is talking about these people when he heard about how they are. He said these people, if they call them Salafi, they're not Salafi. Salafi is adhering to the way of the Salaf. Salafi used to have this type of tahazzub, this bias, partisanship.
إذا هم ليسوا سلفيين في هذه المسألة على الأقل. إذا لا يصح لهم أن يقولوا نحن على الكتاب والسنة.
لو أصروا على هذا القول وعلى هذا الحال يقال إنهم خارجون من السلفيين
وخارجون عن السنة
وعن السنة وعن الفرقة الناجية
وعن الفرقة الناجية بلا شك مع ملاحظة قيد السابق.
Yeah, so Shaykh Albani says if they continue upon this, how they are with their biased partisanship, they've left the Salafi and they're not even firqa najiyah anymore. So this is what Al-Uthaymin is talking about. This is what Albani is talking about here. So here's some words of Shaykh Muhammad Al-Uthaymin as well to clarify further. التفرق والتحزب في المسلمين عنوان الفشل. And then he also mentions at the end of it وإذا كان كذلك فإن الواجب من الأصل القضاء على هذه الحزبية فكلنا سلفيون وكلنا إخوان مسلمون وكلنا أهل دعوة وتبليغ. He's talking about this bias and partisanship, and it's upon us to rid the Muslims from this. So we're all Salafis, and we're all Muslim brotherhoods, and we're all people of da'wah calling, conveying. And this is where he was pointing it for you. Not to say that he's opening at other ones to be all under one group of Salafis. Because he says in his Sharh Aqidat Wasatiyah, السلف هم أهل السنة والجماعة ولا يصدق الوصف على غيرهم أبدا والكلمات تعتبر بمعانيها لننظر كيف نسمي من خالف السنة أهل السنة لا يمكن. وكيف يمكن أن نقول عن 3 طوائف مختلفة إنهم مجتمعون؟ فأين الاجتماع؟ فأهل السنة والجماعة هم السلف معتقدا حتى المتأخر إلى يوم القيامة إذا كان على طريق النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأصحابه فإنه سلفي. To clarify, as a Salafi can be all these multiple groups and then they all come together. He says the Salafi can put under these people those who oppose Ahl Sunnah. So this also to further clarify Shaykh Muhammad Al-Uthaymin. It's already been clarified, but Shaykh Muhammad Umal is rehashing old issues years ago, doubts that have been already clarified. He's putting it in a context now as this is something, and it looks like from what is apparent, Allah, because someone already compiled this, that he's reading from some research that someone sent him, and he's just putting it forward. So I think he already planned this, and he had this ready, and he's reading it. And we tell them, why do you take what's for your Uthaymin speech and leave what's against you? Why don't you take the parts of Uthaymin where he says in it, and it is not allowed to have takattul dini, that a group becomes restricted to itself, religious groups, and also dividing into multiple groups. Why do you take all those parts? Like here we play an audio of Shaykh Muhammad Al-Uthaymin, inshallah. Because Waki' ibn Jarrah, one of the Salafis, says, أهل السنة يأخذون ما لهم ويتركون ما عليهم. وأهل البدعة يعني يتركون ما عليهم ويأخذون ما لهم. أهل السنة, they take what's for them and what's in their favor and what's against them. For them or against them. Say the truth even if it's bitter. Even if it's against you. But the people of falsehood, they only take that which is in their favor. So you find that they quote these scholars, Uthaymin, Albani, when it's in their favor. But when they're saying things against them and refuting individuals, like Uthaymin was refuting Adnan Ar'ur, why didn't you take that? And when they told him, Shaykh Rabi' refuted him, this people refuted him, he said all these scholars are reliable. And to take their state advice. Why didn't you take that part? And there was so much fitting that Shaykh Muhammad Al-Uthaymin, there's even a lecture on YouTube where Shaykh Rabi' is speaking about warning from the groups. You find Uthaymin, he's out there too, and he comments, follow, and Shaykh bin Baz as well, and we'll share that. And he praises, and they follow it with commentary together with Shaykh Baz, and give a lecture with Shaykh Rabi' after all those time. So to say that these speeches applying to these individuals is not correct. And you are taking someone's speech out of context. And you're leaving with other speech that's clear. Also, before we get to Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami and Harb al-Khalij, and just end with there, inshallah, with a few little side benefits. We notice that Muhammad Umal, he's using old speech of Shaykh Baz, al-Uthaymin, Lajnat al-Daima, when it wasn't so clear the condition of Jama'at Ikhwan Muslimin. There's even old speech about Albani. And then later on, if you look at the dates, these scholars, they spoke about them. Like some of them, 1 year before they died, said من 72 فرقة, from the 72 sects that are under the threat to go to the hellfire. Tabligh and Ikhwan. All of his audio, like, why would you take an earlier speech that wasn't so clear at that time? Ikhwan Muslimin, a lot of people, it was just developing. 1928, they were, and to come and say, there to be known, there were a lot of people didn't really see their evil until years later, after certain people manifested it and clarified it. So Al-Uthaymi and some of these scholars, they came out to clear and they warned. And here we'll play an audio of Shaykh Baz, where he's saying that they're from the 72 sects. And I already clarified on YouTube, if you go to our Da'wah YouTube channel, the title is Ikhwan Muslimin, a deviant sect. Here we play the audios of the ulama and give the reference points and the tariq with the speech and even other contexts of how scholars recanted later on Albani's speech. So now we find at Itisaam, they share some of these old fatwa, and they say, take the good and leave the bad, work with they share these old fatwas. But they don't want to share the latter ones of what these scholars were upon, and when they seen the evil, and they even spoke about how much evil these groups had. So here's a transcript of the speech of Shaykh Baz, but here's the dates. 2 years before he died, from the durus of his Sharh al-Muntaqa fi Ta'if. It's a sharit musajjal, recorded tape before he died by 2 years or less. He's asked Shaykh Baz, أحسن الله إليك, حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم في افتراق الأمم قوله ستفترق أمتي على 73 فرقة إلا واحدة. فهل جماعة التبليغ على ما عندهم من شركيات وبدع وجماعة الإخوان المسلمين على ما عندهم من تحزب وشق العصا على ولاة الأمور وعدم السمع والطاعة، هل هاتين الفرقتين تدخل؟ فأجاب، so he said تدخل في 72 من خالف عقيدة أهل السنة دخل في 72. المراد بقول أمتي أمة الإجابة، استجابوا له وأظهروا اتباعهم له 73 فرقة. And then he also says هاتين الفرقتين من ضمن 72. He says نعم من ضمن 72. So this is clear, brothers, and that's why you find the scholars upon that. Even the members of Lajnat al-Daima, they are upon that as well. They clarify this. Like here's Shaykh Abdul Razak al-Afifi, خروج مع جماعة التبليغ. Here's الواقع أنهم مبتدعة منحرفون وأصحاب طرق قادرية وغيرهم. So this is, he calls them innovators. And also, here are some wordings of Shaykh Abdullah al-Ghudayan. He says, فعندنا مثل ما يسمونه بجماعة الإخوان المسلمين، وعندنا مثل جماعة تبليغ، وفي جماعات كثيرة، كل واحد يرأس له جماعة يريد أن الناس يتبعون هذه الجماعة، ويحرم ويمنع اتباع غير جماعته، ويعتقد أن جماعته هي التي على الحق وأن الجماعة الأخرى على الضلالة. فكم فيه من حق في الدنيا، الحق الواحد كما ذكرت لكم. Then he mentions the hadith تفترق على 73 فرقة كلها في النار إلا واحدة. كل جماعة تضع لها النظام ويكون لها الرئيس ويكون لها جماعة، هذه الجماعات يعملون بيعة. So So when some of the people are telling you, Shaykh Muhammad Umal, that there's some who have a Ra'is, Jama'ah, Nizam, he's talking about these type of groups. It's known that these type of groups, they have Bay'ah, allegiance. So Ahlul Sunnah are not like this, these type of groups. And everybody knows that Ikhwan, they had Bay'ah, they have a leader, they have Nizam, they have a manifesto that they follow. Other than really what Quran and Sunnah, Tabligh have certain principles that they played out. The Sufi as well. And also there's some audios of Taymiyyah about Tabligh and all that, but they use later on because these people have a tendency to use some old fatawas. Like, just go back to the dates. The tarikh, bainana bainakum tarikh. Just go back to the dates. When was this audio recorded? The date is there with the book, name, everything.
وإخواننا التبليغيون وفقنا الله وإياهم للصواب هم أناس سلكوا مسلكا ألا وهو مسلك يعني التصوف في كثير من أحوالهم.
So here's the Mufti, Shaykh Abdul Aziz Ali Shaykh. Speaking about Tabligh, about how they went to extremism.
هم يهتمون بأذكار الصباح أذكار المساء أذكار النوم أذكار اليقظة.
We're trying to fast forward it to the Ikhwan.
ذو علم وشرف الذكر صلة بالعلم ونقول استصحبوا علماء بحالها بل الغالب على المرجعية الخارجة من جزيرة العرب والبعيدة عن بلاد العرب أنها مرجعية يشك أن تكون وثنية لأنهم يدعون أصحابهم بعد أن يلزموهم طويل إلى بيعة شخص ما موجود في أحد الأقاليم خارج الديار الإسلامية فهم مرتبطون ببيعة لأناس.
Imagine that they call it a bay'ah. After a person stays with them for a long time, they make you pledge allegiance to someone in a particular area, and you get to promote it. People that went with them, they expose them, the reality. He says that it can lead to even wathaniya, shirk, of the marji'iyya, the way they return.
المرجعية مشبوهة أو قل المرجعية غير مشروعة فلهذا لا ننصح بصحبتهم إلا بحذر لمن كان يريد أن يعلمهم ويرشدهم ويأتينا الإخوان المسلمون فنحن نقول كل المسلمين إخوان.
And now he's not advising the Ikhwan Muslimin now.
فماذا يريد أولئك؟ إن كانت الأخوة مبنية على الكتاب والسنة فكل مسلم عبد الله واتقاه.
If you guys want brotherhood, all the Muslims are brotherhood by the Kitab and Sunnah. Why is this special group? Like Muhammad Umal, when he came here, he was arguing about the permissibility of multiple groups and these having multiple groups and kada. People, these scholars, you should quote them as well, those who say it's not permissible, the same scholars you're quoting, and bring it out.
horta dhihi maayo alqaacida waa khawaarij mali xarakatu shabaab almujaahidiina waa khawaarij mali laakiin ayagu ma khawaarij ba hadii la yiraahdo kuma dhiran karo هذه مسألة صعبة جدا الراجح سيدي جماهير دول المسلمين.
And here, like, when he's asked about Al-Qaeda, Muhammad Umal, and Shabab, are they Khawarij? He says it's difficult to say. Can't say that. SubhanAllah, who doesn't know that Al-Qaeda is Khawarij? And Shabab, and this is a Muslim brotherhood for you. These are the groups that you said there's multiple groups allowed. This is what we're happening. We're suffering from the Ummah. So in the part, I believe it's part 3, Shaykh Muhammad Umal, he went on to try to make that the issue with Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami, Shaykh Rabi'a, and those people, those Harakiyin, those scholars at that time who they called the Harakiyin, had that movement, the Sahwa movement, Salman Auda, Safar Hawali, the likes of these individuals. these scholars or these individuals, he made it look like it was just the issue that he had was just because they didn't see to use assistance of the kuffar soldiers, of US soldiers during the Saddam invasion. And Muhammad Aman Jami did, so as a result, he used the government against them. Which is not true, brothers. Everyone knows, it's on YouTube, you can see, even the son of Salman Auda talks about the history from Harb al-Khalij. And I played it, you can go on the YouTube Turan Da'wah channel, I'm going to give the link as well at the bottom, of the history of Salman Auda and everything. We played the audios of even when they're coming out in Buraida, they were doing like rioting. It was not protesting, it was like rioting on the streets, and they were causing commotion, giving khutbahs about the government. They were doing all this. This is where the Sururi movement was started. And they were doing so much, and they're connected to their initial teacher, Muhammad Surur. Muhammad Surur, who was the teacher of Salman Auda and these people when he was in Saudi. So they connected with him. And this person, he used the whole invasion thing to write books, and he wrote a lot of publications. A Majalla was a magazine. So Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami, Shaykh Rabi' were the early scholars that to speak about them. And as a result, because it was at the early stages, it caused a huge spark, because these people had a big following. Not because of jealousy that Shaykh Muhammad Umal is saying. He was jealous about them because they had a bigger halaqa. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah.
oo dhegaysan jireen muxaadaraadka raggan dhalinyarada saxwa aad u xoog badan oo markuu mid iyaga ka mid yidhaahdo muxaadaan dhigahaya jidadku buuxsamaya ayaa xilligaa jirtay raggan kale culimada Sheikh Rabi' iyo Sheikh Muhammad Aman Jami iyo rag culimay ahaayeen laakiin يعني وحويان محاضرات كودا إيو حلقات كودا إيو دروس تودا إيو سيداسو كاللوما إيمانين ماشا مركا علماء القاركود وحي تلماما نوع حسد إنو قلي وين الأعضاء علماء مركا
This is what I'm saying. Because a lot of people attended or reading them for Shaykh Rabi' Shaykh Muhammad Jami, it was all this was some jealousy got involved, and this is how it sparked the issue. And people who know the real issue about Salman Auda and so forth, and the fitna he caused, and he was plotting to make Saudi Arabia a democratic state. And his son even admitted this. It's on YouTube. Go. And it's not someone from anyone else. It's his son mentioning this. And he was doing so much things. They found a lot of proof. There's videos of documentary about Salman Auda, the rioting in the streets and everything. He used the whole scene of that to cause fitna. He couldn't. It's not just he had opinion and the other one had opinion, because Shaykh Albani had the opinion that they shouldn't have brought the US soldiers, and Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami had a different opinion. But with that, there was still love between them. Even if you listen to the Shaykh Muhammad Jami's tape about Shaykh Albani's opinion. He said, Shaykh Albani Habib, walakin ahaq ahab. And it's still online, you can find it. It's called Nasiha, the tape. Advice. So Shaykh Albani is beloved to us, but the truth is more beloved. And there was still respect and everything. Not because of difference of opinion which they had. So why do you treat like Albani that? No, because these people were different. They would do something else. It was a conspiracy. They're up to something against the Saudi government. And there's no harm to inform the Saudi government about these people that are plotting to harm the youth and so forth. There was a Sururi movement at that time. There was even a plan, some of them, to do an overthrow. Even like one of the Saudi bombings were connected to some of these individuals at Riyadh. So what Shaykh Muhammad Jami did, Shaykh bin Baz later on had to do. So Muhammad Umal, he mentions the first bayan at the beginning when people were complaining to Shaykh Muhammad, and Shaykh Muhammad at the beginning, just in the middle, he doesn't. But later on, when he's seen the proofs, he wrote a bayan himself, which Umal didn't read, I don't know why, where he told Salman Auda and these people, you're no longer permitted, he's using the government against them from stopping them from even teaching in khutbahs because of this issue and this issue. And then later on, he imprisoned them, locked them up in prison. He used the government against them. So why didn't Umal use the fact that Shaykh bin Baz used the government against them? Why did they only make it Muhammad Amal Jami? That is a hidden agenda, brothers. If he was fair, he would have said that Shaykh bin Baz as well, against those people that Muhammad Amal Jami, he used the government against them and he locked them up. And it's online, you can find the request to the Saudi government, public, to lock these people up or to prevent them. The first stage was to prevent them from teaching, it was like a house arrest. So people would just go to them, visit them, house arrest. Yasir Qadi even said, if you listen online on YouTube, he said, I went to them, I was from the people that visited them at a time where it was secret, I wasn't allowed to. So he even risked himself, just go visit, he was connected to these people.
منهم معترضين لا ما اكتفوا بهذا الامر. بدأ الموضوع عندهم الى الشحن والى التهييج والى التخوين والى يعني اتهام الحكام والقيادات بانهم عملاء وانهم خونه. بدأت السالفه تكبر اكثر.
So the Sururi movement started to say they are agents of the West and this, and they started to incite violence. And this is the fitna that was happening. Everybody knows that side. It wasn't just they had a different opinion, ijtihad.
فأكثر. وهنا بدأنا نقرب حق النقطة اللي قاعد أتكلم عنها. وكان ممن تصدر هذا المشهد مجموعة أشخاص من أبرزهم الدكتور سلمان العودة والدكتور سفر الرحوالي والدكتور ناصر العمر. ما أدري هم كلهم دكاترة ولا بس.
So these are the individuals that Muhammad Umal mentioned in his talk, and this person clarifying them too. These are the people that were guilty of so much fitnas that happened of that time.
تجاوزوا عني. كانوا هذول من تسيدوا هذا المشهد وهذه الفئة المخالفة لهذه الفتوى، ولكن مش بس مخالفة علمية، مخالفة مع وجود نوع من المعارضة والحركة والتهييج والشحن وغيرها. تقدرون ترجعوا إلى خطبهم وإلى المصادر أو الأشياء.
He said you can go back to the khutbahs at that time. It's online on YouTube. I even share some clips on the channel, the facts about why Muhammad Salman Aoud and these people, Safar Hawali, were arrested by the Saudi government.
ترجعوا إلى خطبهم وإلى المصادر أو الأشياء اللي تكلمت عن تلك الحقبة. شنو الرابط في هذا الموضوع؟ الرابط في هذا الموضوع أن هذول الأشخاص وغيرهم، حتى ممكن بعضهم في الكويت أو غير الكويت اللي كانوا ممكن يميلون لهذا الرأي لكن على استحياء، كانت لهم علاقة التلميذ بالشيخ والمتعلم بالعالم برجل اسمه محمد سرور نايف زين العابدين. هذا الاسم حط تحته 40 خط لأن بدينا بالقصة. من هو محمد سرور كما يسمى؟ يعني هذا اسمه الشائع رحمة الله عليه. هذا رجل سوري نشأ مع جماعة الإخوان المسلمين، وجماعة الإخوان في أواخر الستينات صار فيها انشقاقات داخلية. الرجل كان ممن
He mentions the Ikhwan Muslimin in 1960s. They had a lot of differences, splitting amongst themselves.
مال مع جناح عصام العطار، هذا جناح انشقه ويعني كان مال بينهم. المهم يعني آل فيه المطاف إلى أن يكون معلما في المملكة العربية السعودية. وهنا تأثر أيضا بالدعوة السلفية الموجودة في السعودية. تخيل عنده تأثر قديم بالإخوان وعنده تأثر جديد بالدعوة.
So this Sururi guy, he came to Saudi, learned. So he had the Muslim Brotherhood with him previously, and then the Salafi, what he learned from Saudi. And then he formed them together. It was like everybody knows that Sururi, it's a movement of taking partially of Salafiyya with it and the Ikhwan Muslim Brotherhood. So this is where Sururi came from, brothers. Some Muhammad al-Jami just made it up. These scholars, when they're speaking of Sururi, they're talking about these people. It's hard. Like we can find some of these people. They'll probably act like some of the Salafis or quote, talk like them. But he's an Ikhwani. But he's just slightly, this is what it is. We call him Sururi. And this is where Umal and a lot of them, they fall into. They follow this type of side.
الدعوة السلفية الموجودة في السعودية. تخيل عنده تأثر قديم بالإخوان وعنده تأثر جديد بالدعوة السلفية. شوف هذه التركيب وهذه التكوين اللي صار عند هذا الرجل. في هذه الفترة صار عنده طلاب في السعودية، منهم الأسماء اللي ذكرناهم وغيرهم. وبعد فترة انتقل إلى الكويت، وأيضا صار عنده بعض الطلاب والتلاميذ والشعبية عند بعض الأشخاص في الكويت. وإلى اليوم موجودين هؤلاء الأشخاص. وكان يصدر بعض الكتب بأسماء وهمية. سافر إلى بريطانيا، وبعد بريطانيا راح الأردن، وفي آخر حياته أظن انتهى به المطاف في قطر وتوفي فيها رحمة الله عليه. هنا محمد سرور زين العابدين. طلاب هذا الرجل المشهور في بعض المصادر كما تذكر عنه بالسلفية الإخوانية، يسمونه كذا لأنه تأثر هنا وهناك.
نرجع نتكلم عن هذه الظاهرة. ظاهرة تيار جديد يبدو أنه يجمع بين مدرسة الإخوان المسلمين الحركية من الناحية الحركية ومدرسة السلفية من الناحية الاهتمام بالتأكيد على العقائد وعلى السلوكيات اللي فيها انتهاج للسنة النبوية. هذا التيار موجود، هو حقيقة، أليس كذلك؟
نعم هو حقيقة.
Inshallah, here it is. The founder of this group, Muhammad Surur himself, the Sururiya, he's asked in an interview. It's online. Let's play the audio. It's a combination of Salafi and Ikhwan? He says, yes, this is the truth, reality. So this is no one lied. The founder himself was telling you that the Sururiya, him is like, this tayyar, this movement is a combination of Muslim brotherhood with Salafi.
الرجل طلابه وتلاميذه هم الذين كانوا يتسيدون ويعني يظهرون يتكلمون يسوون مثل هذه الأشياء، وأعمالهم وتحركاتهم ما كانت فقط يعني في فترة الغزو، بل استمرت لعدة أعوام، منها أظن يسمونها انتفاضة بريدة أو ثورة بريدة أو شيء. راح أحط لكم فيديو بعد هذا المقطع كنبذة عما حصل، تقدرون بعدين ترجعون أكثر وتشوفون اللي دار واللي جرى.
التيار السروري ما بين 1990 ما بين أزمة الخليج و1994 نشط وظهر له رموز بسبب الخطة التي وضعت منذ 1985. الانفتاح على
So this is Sa'ad al-Faqih, يعني one of the biggest of the Sururiya movement. He's telling you what happened. That this thing caused the Sururi movement, this is where it's bringing.
بقية المشايخ الانفتاح على المجتمع، وتحرك الشيخ سمان العودة وسفر الحوالي وناصر العمر وآخرون وملأوا الجو ودفعوا غيرهم، أجبروا غيرهم أن يساهم في هذا الاتجاه.
لقد قدم الطغاة من خلال تصرفاتهم الحمقاء خدمة نادرة لمسيرة الدعوة.
Like the khutbah. This is a clip of the khutbah. This is how they're talking. This is how they're talking about the rulers and everything. Everything's documented, brothers. There's facts. Do not allow Shaykh Muhammad Umal to just change history, brothers. Everything is documented. And make it look like it was just an ijtihad issue they differed on, and that's why there's and he uses hasad, there's jealousy.
ومعروف بتزهيده للشباب في كتب التوحيد ومحاربته لكتب التوحيد. كل ذلك مفصل عندكم في بعض محاضراتي السابقة، وعرفتم موقف كبار العلماء من كتابه وفتواه فيه. هذه هي السرورية. أما الإخوان المسلمون فأقدم منهم وأوسع منهم باعا وأكثر منهم دعاية لمنهجهم.
Yeah, like Muhammad Surur, as saying the books of Aqidah has some dryness. And when they told Shaykh bin Baz about this, he said this is a statement of apostasy. I mean, like somewhat it's lacking. This is scary. So here's his words of Muhammad al-Jami explaining who the Sururiya and the Ikhwan al-Muslimin are. And here's some words of Shaykh Salih Fawzan to show you the ulama was supporting the movement later on of Shaykh Muhammad al-Jami against the Sururiya at that time. First, we're going to read this, hear the speech. He has a whole lecture. الرد على السرورية محاضرة الشيخ محمد الجامع. and then الشيخ صالح فوزان says الشيخ محمد الأمان الجامع قد أملى شريطا كاملا على هذه الكلمة. and then he says رد عليه ردا بليغا، فعليكم أن تبحثوا عن الشريط وأن تنشروه بين المسلمين حتى يحذروا من هذا الخبث من هذا الشر الوافد إلى بلاد المسلمين. يعني هذا شريط قيم جدا، جزا الله خيرا شيخنا الشيخ محمد أمان الجامع ونصر به الإسلام والمسلمين. Shaykh Salih Fawzan talking about what he did at that time of the Khalij against the Sururis, something good, that he was in support of the tape. So he wasn't alone, Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami. There was other scholars supporting him, especially when the matter became even further clear. Here's more speech of Muhammad Aman Jami, just so people can hear this context.
يقول أهل قادة التهييج السياسي إن كتب العقيدة تحتاج إلى تغيير، هي كتب جافة لأنها نصوص وأحكام فما حكم هذا القول؟ الجواب أوجد في هذا الجواب، يعني سبق لي أن أجبت أو كتبت محاضرة أو ألقيت محاضرة في هذه المسألة أو عالجت في بعض محاضراتي، لكن السؤال يقول هكذا: فما حكم هذا القول؟ أجيب بما أجاب به كبار العلماء الذين يعتبر كلامهم فتوى.
He quotes, he's going to quote that other scholars supported him. Shaykh Muhammad Jami is going to mention this against his group at that time.
كلامهم أبلغ من كلامي، لأن كلامي كلام إنسان عادي، درس عادي، محاضرة عادية، لكن كلام الإمام كلام الشيخ ابن باز وكلام الدكتور الفوزان من علماء الفتوى، محاضرتهم ودروس الفتوى. لذلك أنقل لكم ما قال الشيخ عبد العزيز بن باز في هذا الكتاب الذي يشير إليه السائل، كتاب اسمه منهاج أو منهاج الأنبياء في الدعوة إلى الله لمحمد سرور زين العابدين. حكم الشيخ على هذا الكتاب بأنه يجب تمزيقه ولا يجوز بيعه وأن ما في الكتاب ردة.
So he's quoting even Shaykh Mubarak. Also from the speech of Shaykh Muhammad al-Jami during that time, so people can see, even when he's speaking about Salman Auda, that was about Muhammad Surur, which is also at that time. Here is another about Salman Auda.
وما حصل من النساء، نعود مرة أخرى، أنا أقول في استنتاجي حسب تجاربي للقوم إن
So he's saying, based upon my experience with these people, he's going to predict something, he's going to mention which.
أصابع تلعب مع البعثيين والعلمانيين والقوميين والنسائيين يشتركون معهم.
He said these people, based upon, they're going to come a time where they're going to join with the socialists and these type of groups, the communists, the feminists. And this is what happened. Later on, even in Kuwait, there's a multaqa called Multaqa Nahda al-Shababi, the Rising Forum, second. And they had women, feminists, and liberals, Shi'i, they all joined the forum and made it talk together and calling for the youth to revive the youth, awakening the youth. And they said 20 years, like this is Muhammad Aman Jami predicting something, and it came true. And so where's the jealousy? Where's the thing about this difference? He's talking about experience about these people. And this person, Muhammad Aman Umal, is saying that he formed this Hizbi group, a Salafi group that just formed during that time. No, he's talking about people that are deviated, that has went astray.
لأن من منهجهم أن يستعينوا بأي إنسان وبأهل أي ملة إذا كانوا يظنون أن ذلك يقربهم من السلطة يوما ما. هم عشاق السلطة.
So he mentions, like even the Ikhwan Muslimin, they're asked, there's some speech of this, if I can find it online as well, where they said, is it possible to join the Muslim Brotherhood if you're Christian? They say yes, as long as you're on you follow the manhaj of the Muslim Brotherhood. So you can be a Christian, you can be a part of their members. And also, during that time, there's scholars praising, and even after their death of Shaykh Muhammad Jami, and even for Shaykh Rabi', they praised them. I'll show you just to show that the scholars, no one was critiquing them. It was making like, it was just at the beginning when the time was not clear, Shaykh Mubarak was just trying to control the situation. And then later on, when he seen the fitna of these people that Muhammad Jami was refuting and warning, he took the side of Muhammad Jami. And that's why there was so much praises later on for Shaykh Mubarak for Muhammad Jami.
أقول أن حامل راية الجرح والتعديل اليوم في العصر الحاضر وبحق وأخونا الدكتور الربيع.
So why is he saying that? Why is Shaykh Mubarak, if he's going wrong in his criticism and everything, and he's all, manhaj was wrong, manhaj kharban, as Umal is saying, that is a corrupted manhaj, why is Shaykh Albani at the time he's alive saying that this person's Jarh Ta'deel is good, he's a flag bearer of it? Not to say everything what he says is right, like Shaykh Ahmed Najmi says, not everything what he says is right. Shaykh Muhammad says we don't blind follow Shaykh Rabi'. Shaykh Rabi' says we don't blind follow, he tells no one to blind follow him. But just to say, but his manhaj that he was learning from Salafiyya, that was correct. But not to say everything he says is correct, but generally, this is the praise of the scholars for him.
وبحق وأخونا الدكتور الربيع والذين يردون عليه بعلم أبدا ولا علم.
So he defends him. He says, those who are refuting him and claiming that what he's doing is wrong, and his jarh and his ta'deel, they're not responding with knowledge. Shaykh Albani defended him from what these people were saying about Shaykh at that time. That's what we're saying. Here's Shaykh bin Baz.
والشيخ ربيع بن هادي والخليل كلاهما من السنة ومعروفان لدي بالعلم والفضل والعقيدة الصالحة.
Shaykh bin Baz, he says, Muhammad Aman Jam, Shaykh Rabi'. Why those two? Because there was a lot of heat on them too. So you defend them. Both of them from Ahlul Sunnah, and both of them are known with knowledge and virtue and aqidah that is upright. Umal doesn't mention that. He only took the bayan that was for him and he left all of the speech that came after. That clarifies further. This is the people they tamper with things and they just take what's for them and leave what's against them. Another speech of Shaykh Baz, he says, Shaykh Rabi', you can find on YouTube a title, Min Khirat Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah, praising him at that time. Because Shaykh Rabi' was doing refutations at that time. And also, one of the things that Umal made it look like that, by saying Min Baz, they see that you're supposed to work with other groups, cooperate with them, and take the good and leave the bad, and for the better, greater benefits. And let's hear the same speech, the actual speech, see if it's what Umal is insinuating.
سائل يقول هل من الحكمة العمل مع الأحزاب الإسلامية التي تواجه العلمانية والشيوعية وغيرها من المبادئ الهدامة أم الحكمة ترك هذه الأحزاب وترك العمل السياسي مطلقا؟ جزاكم الله خيرا. الحكمة في هذه الأحزاب أن نعمل بما كان عليه السلف الصالح من سلوك الطريق الصحيح في أنفسنا أولا.
So they ask him to work with these type of socialists and communists and stuff, to work with Ahl Bid'ah to go against the bigger groups of the socialists, the communists, for greater benefit.
ثم في إصلاح غيرهم وفي هذا كفاية في رد الأعداء والعمل مع الفرق الأخرى الضالة التي تنتسب إلى الإسلام قد لا يزيد الأعداء إلا شدة.
So that's follow the correct way and leave it like that. That's working with other groups, it probably only increased the affair and severity.
لأنهم سوف يدخلون علينا من البدع الضالة ويقولون أنتم تقولون كذا وكذا لأننا أمامهم طائفة واحدة فيحصل لنا الضرر بهذا الاجتماع المشتمل على البدع.
So the enemies can enter upon us through these people of innovations. Because they're looking at us all as one and we're working together. This is what happens. Sometimes the kuffar look at us all as one and we're blamed for some of these people's actions later on.
والسنة. لكننا نجانب هذا كله وندعو من طريق واحد وهو طريق السلف الصالح وكفى به كفاية. وما هذا الفكر الذي يقول نجتمع كلنا من أهل السنة وأهل البدع في مقابلة الأعداء، ما هذا النظر إلا كنظر من يقول هات الأحاديث الضعيفة واجمعها في الترغيب واجمع الأحاديث الضعيفة في الترهيب
من أجل أن يرغب الناس في الطاعة.
So here he said these people that say work with Ahl Bid'ah come together to go against the enemies of Islam. It's like the people who say let's take the weak hadith so we can encourage people to do certain good by using weak hadith that have general good meanings, good quality, just to put some good spirits in the people. So this is the resemblance. And he's critiquing it, Itisaam, rahmatullah alayhi. Here's some words of Shaykh Salih Fawzan when they asked about Shaykh Mubarak's stance about Jama'at al-Ikhwan wa Tabligh.
10 سنوات ما سمعناه يثني أكثر من كلام غير صحيح ونحن جالسناه.
هذا الكلام صحيح. توفي وهو يثني وينصح بجماعة التبليغ والإخوان المسلمين، فهذا الكلام هل هذا الكلام صحيح؟
هذا الكلام غير صحيح ونحن جالسناه أكثر من 10 سنوات ما سمعناه يثني إلا على أهل السنة والجماعة، ويدعو إلى أهل السنة والجماعة وينصح لمن أخطأ من الجماعات الأخرى أن يتراجع عن خطأه من التبليغيين وغيرهم. هذا الذي أعرفه عن شيخي الشيخ بن باز رحمه الله.
Yes, that's what it is. Shaykh Baz just advises these groups. And he wouldn't praise them. That's what he's saying. We know the last stance of Shaykh Baz after we've seen the state of these people.
ولما ظهرت قضية الإخوان الذين يتصرفون بغير حكمة ازداد تشويه الإسلام في نظر الغربيين وغيرهم.
The thing is that Ikhwan, when they did certain things, they made Islam, Muslims look bad even more in front of the Westerners to their actions. Also, Sheikh Muhammad Umal, in his speech, he used some wordings of Shaykh Ibn Sa'bad. He was talking about Shaykh Rabi'. And he took it out of context. He made it look like it was regarding that time or that affair when Shaykh Muhammad Aman Jami and Shaykh Rabi' were going at Salman Auda and these people like Safar Hawali. And that's not correct. Because Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abbad, he has a preface on a book called Madarik al-Nadhr. That's basically observations on Safar Salman. And he says الاثنين من الشباب هذه البلاد هداهم الله اتهم كل منهما كبار علماء العصر في هذه البلاد بالقصور لأنهم أفتوا بتسويق مجيء قوات أجنبية لمشاركة في الدفاع عن البلاد أثر الهجوم الغاشم من طاغية العراق على الكويت، وكان نتيجة ذلك دحر العدو المعتدي والإبقاء بحمد الله على الأمن والاطمئنان. So he says, well, these people, they accused the ulama when the Arab Gulf War happened, the invasion of Saddam, that their opinion was deficient. Then also Shaykh Abdul Muhsin Abbad, he says, أن يهيج الغواة من الرجال والنساء الإقدام على ما يثير الفتن وما يؤول بغير أهل العقل والثبات والرزانة إلى تعريض أنفسهم للضرر. And then also the sujoon and prison. Shaykh Muhammad Abbad is telling what happened at that time, what these people are doing. That's why Shaykh Muhammad Jami. So Shaykh Muhammad Abbad was not against what Shaykh Rabi'. Shaykh Rabi' Abbad, he himself, he clarified what that book was Rifqan Ahl Sunnah bi Ahl Sunnah for, and his speech that time. Well, let's play it here for you just to clarify.
والكتاب الذي كتبته أخيرا هو رفقا من أهل السنة بأهل السنة لا علاقة للذين ذكرتهم في مدارك النظر.
So here he said the book Rifqan bi Ahl Sunnah bi Ahl Sunnah. Gentlemen, Umal is trying to make it look like it was regarding that Khalij incident. It has nothing to do with these people that I mentioned, Madarik Nadar, Salman and Safar.
الكتاب لا علاقة بالذين ذكرتم من مدارك النظر في هذا الكتاب. فهذا الكتاب الذي وصل بأهل السنة والسنة بأهل السنة لا يعني إلى الإخوان المسلمين.
It says not for Ikhwan Muslimin.
ولا يعني المفتونين بسيد قطب وغيره في الحق.
It's not for those who are affected by Sayyid Qutb and غيره, those who are trialed with them.
ولا يعني أيضا المفتونين بفتح الواقع والليل من الحكام وكذلك التزهيد في العلماء. لا يعني هؤلاء لا من قريب ولا من بعيد، وإنما يعني أهل السنة فقط.
It's not for the deviant sects. It's just for Ahl Sunnah. So to take Shaykh Muslim Abbad's speech of some general, maybe an instance that happened with Shaykh Rabi' where he probably got a little bit distracted at a particular time, and to apply it, to say that this is what even Shaykh Muslim Abbad was against her. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Brothers, there's a qiyamah, brothers. There's Yawm al-Qiyamah. Because either this is something that person say it was done unknowingly, and which is far-fetched. From what's apparent is that because the speech he's quoting from its resources, has dates, everything's there, he's mentioning more, and to this on a consistent basis, and it takes speech to have something and just misquote history like that, and there's accountability, brothers. Especially for someone who's like a scholarly figure who studied, graduate, and he knows all these things. He was there to just change and misquote everything. Allah Alam, brothers, this is scary. The other part, I believe part 4, was Umal was bringing certain differences that he said that was found in amongst the Salafis. This is to show that these people are worse than other groups. And this is not correct. And like even Umal himself, how much he knows himself, he had differences amongst people that he's with. And they broke up, maybe they came together and they had different statements. And I'll give examples.
وحافظ قرآنك يقانو عد قرحسن لكن هو جاهل.
Shaykh Muhammad Umal, he says, find that he has a good voice, but he's ignorant. Let's give an example of someone.
loo buunbuuninayo isaga laftiisa waa kadsoomayaaba maaldood waxaa la ii sheegay nin oo ragga soomaalida oo qur-aanka akhriya ka mid oo laakiin aqoon badan qur-aanka macnihiisa aan u lahayn ayaa ninba yuu ii sheekeeyo wuxuu yidhi ilaahay qur-aankan uu igu barakeeyey ilaahay qur-aankan maaragta uu igu barakeeyey magac buu igu siiyey xooluu igu siiyey ما شاء الله marka waa maqruur ilaahay markuu quraanka kugu barakeynayo waa marka macnihiisa uu ku fahansiiyo dhaqankiisana ku waafajiyo laakiin inaad quraanka alfaadiisa kaliya iyo xifdigiisa cod quruxsan magac ku yeelato oo gogol lagu dhigo oo dawladu kugu soo dhaweeyaan oo lagu sacabiyo waa imtixaan ma aha doorasho ma لكن واد كتسونتي واد سقرويد.
So here in this clip, Shaykh Muhammad Umal, from these individuals of the head figures of Itisaam, points out a point that was noticeable, even found with Shaykh Abdul Rashid Ali Sufi, is that some of them will feel that the Quran is that which gives them the name, grant them wealth, got the people to welcome him, and that Allah blessed him by this Quran. So he says this is a person being deceived. Just to know the wordings alone and not know the meanings, and just the fact that any country or governments, they pull out the red carpet or they welcome you, this is not what's intended. This is a trial, he says. This is a test. And this is what happens sometimes. So that's what. Before that, I wanted to, because what Umal mentioned, he quoted Shaykh Salih al-Wahidan and tried to make it look like Shaykh Salih al-Wahidan was, as he was seeing that these people had like a fikr, their own ideology they invented, or like as a Jamia, and he was doing something wrong, and Muhammad Salih al-Wahidan advised him. So we want to bring some other speech of Shaykh Salih al-Wahidan. We can understand his speech further, inshallah.
حتى هذا النسبة جامية لا أرى إبقاءها، فالرجل ليست له فكرة خاصة به.
Pay attention. He says, as for this term Jami, I don't see it. And because Shaykh Muhammad al-Jami, he said he doesn't have a fikr, an ideology specific to him. MashaAllah. Why did Umal not mention this speech? Why did he take the part where he says, the part where he advised them, and you don't even know, it's just a general advice probably. But you take out the other part, because it doesn't go against with your muhadara.
وهو في الحقيقة فيما يتعلق بالاعتقاد على مذهب أهل السنة والجماعة. وقد درس في معهد الرياض العلمي.
طيب, goes back to it, please speak about, like, what he uses, Muhammad Umal, is the fact that a scholar, one time he's praising someone and then he's dispraising him. He's using that as a proof. Like they mentioned Yahya ibn Ma'in and other imams of the past. So, like say about a rawi, a narrator, one time they'll say yani thiqa, or they'll praise him, and then later on they'll say laysa bi shay, it's nothing. How is it possible? An imam can praise someone generally, and then later on see the reality of a person, and then take it back and say something totally different from what he said before. And we know Umal himself, he said about some people, I believe it was Sharif Abdul Noor, what he used to say before about him, and now he said it again. And different statements. Abdullah ibn Mubarak, the Imam of the past, he said, لو خيرت, or لو خيرت بين أن أدخل الجنة وبين أن ألقى عبد الله بن محرر لاخترت أن ألقاه ثم أدخل الجنة فلما رأيته كانت بعر أحب إلي منه. He says, if I was given a choice, I would love to meet one scholar, to enter Jannah, or meet Abdullah ibn Muharrar. He said, I would have chose to meet him first, then enter Jannah. But when I met him, he said, the dung of an animal, the drops, like the remnants that fall from him. Farm, you see that falls from the animal, is more beloved to me than that, to him. And this is possible. To come and use this against the Salafis or say, Kada, why did you say this one time? Why did you? That's not correct. Or to say, hey, Salafis, they said about it, the reason why you find this in the ranks sometimes, because they said it's like Medina. Tanfi khabathaha. As the city Medina, it mentions that it kicks up the bad people out of it. Only good people try to remain generally, especially the last signs of the hour. This is, they said that was Salafiyah. The scholars have mentioned this. So you're going to find it's going to cleanse any people that look like they deviate or change. It's going to come out. It's not like Ikhwan Muslimin, they're just keeping all these people in, and there's just people for so many years, they hate each other, don't like each other, they're just working with each other for some hidden benefits, but they're really different. And also, why did he mention about like the different, like the Muslim Brotherhood? Just to list it for the people and the different books that they wrote in refuting each other. Why didn't he do that? Like they mention just the different groups, Rifa'iyya, even Sufiyya, the Shadiliyya, the Qadiriyya, the Naqshbandiyya, how it broke, the history, the books that they refuted each other on. He didn't do that. The Ikhwan, the Muslimin, Jama'at al-Furqan, Hizb al-Tahrir, Jama'at Islamiyya, Hizb al-Islam, this group, that group. You have all these different groups. And they're refuting each other, and they're forming and mention some of these individuals that some of the people are working with, some who perhaps connected to them, and how they broke off. Why didn't you do that? No, because it's not your benefit. It's not in your favor. You just focus on the people that are advising you. So you're looking for their issues because they advise you about something. You're trying to look for something in history about the mistake of someone or something happened here. You oversaid something, kada. And also the harshness of the Salaf was known. Sometimes they'll be very harsh. They'll say certain things that was extremely harsh in statements. Like if you read some of the statements of Salaf, so to say this is insulting people, and he had a bad tongue, or he had a temper problem, or this, or a bad behavior. This is not correct. Some of the Salaf, they'll be very harsh sometimes with some of the wordings of the people that are opposition to them, who they went astray. And also what you mentioned, you and Hassan, Hussein, why didn't you mention what you used to say about each other before, and now you save each other? And other individuals that you're working with now and what happened before. And we know the hadith, like the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, سيخرج من ضئض هذا, mentions going to come up from a progeny of a man. Khawarij, some of them came out with that within the Sahabas. There was students and there was people broke off and they went extreme, and so just means that they're wrong. Also, like he's got mentioned, like about some of the shuyukh that they listed Hizbis in one sitting and one tape, a bunch of Hizbis. Yes, because the question kept coming about different Hizbis. So he said, let's set one night for it and it'll be transcribed. And it'll be people that were previously spoken about. So it's just been summarized. So this person, this and this and this. What's wrong with that? The books of Jarh wa Ta'deel list so much people that have been deviated, went astray. Also, when he's praising Hayat Turath, he goes, oh, they built a masjid down the Kada street here and there. I don't know, you have to look at what they did more of, the harm. It's not just because they built a masjid. Give them a stamp. Also from what Muhammad Umal mentioned in his parts, that Shaykh Yahya does tabdi' due to picture taking, coming on the screen. And here's the translator, we've translated already, that Shaykh Yahya was asked about, he says, this person make tabdi'? He goes, no, it is a sin. He mentioned that, it's the tabdi'. Person asked to stop changing facts. Yes, some of the scholars, like back in the days, they used to be very harsh, and some of them still are about it. But they didn't say the person just because of that he becomes a mubtadi', innovator. Also, nothing to use like someone how he was before, and they deviate later on and say this. Abdullah Mas'ud says, "Inna al-hayy la tu'min alayhi fitna." The person living is not free from being child and deviating. So, because maybe a scholar praised them one time and then later on refuted them, fitna happened within this test. You think Salafis is going to be, there's no trial, no test? Allah says, وَجَعَلْنَا بَعْضُكُمْ لِبَعْضٍ فِتْنَةً أَتَصْبِرُونَ. And also there's like imposters. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there's munafiqeen causing fitness within the ranks. Allah says, يعني يبغونكم الفتنة. يبغونكم الفتنة. The people that are within the ranks. لو خرجوا فيكم ما زادوكم إلا خبالا. So there's even, we know that this is even the kuffar. They have people that are within, they're causing fitna and trying to divide. Salafis like this. There's people that we found out even later on they work for, and they were adding fuel to the fire. So there's a lot of Salafis already zealous to safeguard and protect. So when they see people like this, they warn from once they see their true colors. And as for some of them can be rulings that are ijtihad, a person can be error in it. And some of the things mentioned about Shaykh, about some of the I don't know if Shaykh is saying this. It's not correct. And there's context for things, and you just follow up. Maybe there's a ijtihad of a scholar, maybe there's proof, look into it. don't just quote and say he said this about him. You don't know about the full issue and you're putting your nose into it. That's not correct. Also, then his part is basically that Umal was just bringing statements that already have been responded to, like about he's saying that the Salafi is going to extreme about the rulers and stuff. All of that has been responded to already. Or things about he's saying that they don't make takfir on clear matters. Like, for example, the Ibrahim house that's in Emirates, that he says Emirates built it, and it's a clear kufr a person makes takfir for. Basically, wants to make takfir on the Emirates. Other issues he brought. He brought other issues that is perhaps a statement of an individual that he made an error in it. That individual himself, but to make it like a manhaj, no, it's not correct. Or like some of them probably like emphasize certain things and exaggerate, and he'll just try to make it look like this is a manhaj of the people. No, it's just probably exaggerating. And you yourself and your people, sometimes you are exaggerating certain things. So, forgive us for the delay, but this is it regarding some of the shubuhat. There's a lot of other points that could be addressed, but we don't want to prolong. We'll perhaps wait until another session when he comes up with the next parts, and we'll respond there, inshallah. So, end with this amount. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us all and to guide some of these masajids that are still connected to some of these individuals, and they still support, and they still have adopted what they have, and making fun of like people that advise them, who call themselves Salafis, they call them super Salafis, or Jadidiyya, or some of them, they all say all sorts of stuff, and Salafi Jadid, and different wordings. So we know who they are, we just let them keep mocking. The truth is going to become clear. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us all. Subhanaka wa bihamdika nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.